of branding, telling your story with social media. We have some special presenters today, Tony Sananis from Jericho, New York, and Joe Sanfilippo from Fall Creek, Wisconsin. And Tony and Joe will share strategies and tips on using social media and web tools to tell your story and the importance of being part of the National Voice for Principals. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tony and Joe. And I also wanted to give some instruction on for the attendees that we invite you to submit questions using this question box on your screen throughout the webinar, and we will answer them as we go. So I will hand it over to you guys now.
Hello. All right. How's everybody doing? Good. Wave, do the virtual wave, whatever you need to do. Get yourself comfortable. I hope you all have your popcorn ready and ready to be wowed by all of Tony's genius. I am merely the guy that clicked through the presentation, and I'm just essentially here to listen to what Tony has to say because it was the easiest way to get into this webinar. So we're very happy to be here and excited to tell you about the things that we're doing. And we'll kind of go through that process right now. So what we want to do is just to let everybody know that we're going to talk about telling a story of schools. We're going to talk about social media. We're going to talk about branding. We're talking about telling your story. So we're going to do all three of those things. But first of all, we want you to know that this should be as informal as possible. If there are simple like questions that you want to have answered about a slide, or if we're going off and it's just not the direction that you want to ask a question about something, or a tip or trick or something like that, then just do it, and we will stop what we're doing and get you going. This has to be for you. It's not for us. And I think sometimes we get into this whole connected educator, like, you have to do these things or you're going to explode, and that's not the case at all. We just want to help anybody that we can out, and the best way to do that is to try to figure out where people are. So in terms of the presentation, though, we'll do it. We'll talk about social media, branding, and what's your story. We're going to do it in this order. And the reason that we tell you what order we're going to do it in is like, if you need to take a quick nap while you're doing this, you certainly can do that and get the information that you need. So you're not going to walk away from the next hour with this whole come to Jesus, or finding Jesus and life is good. That's not what you're going to walk out with. But if you're looking for Jesus, he's right there, just so you know. That's where he is. We're also not going to sit here and do this whole, you should do this. We're not going to should all over you during this process. It's just about what we're doing and what we can do to help out. And if that's helpful to you, great. If it's not, then if there's other things that you could be doing right now, we certainly get that too, because your life is really busy. But we're just going to try to take you through some of the things that we do, and hopefully that'll help out. So when we talk to people about social media, this is usually the reaction that we get, because there's so many things going on within the context of our day that trying to explain one more thing or a different way to do things is really quite difficult. And so don't feel bad if you're not at the place where social media comes really quickly to you. That's not a bad thing. I mean, wherever you are, it's fine. So this Schulman quote really kind of speaks to where we feel like teaching is and schools are. Teaching is so hard, and being a principal is very, very difficult. And I think part of what we have received, or part of the things that we've done out of doing all this work, is that the best part of our day is really celebrating kids and telling a great story of our school. And it brings us a lot of joy, but it also brings us a lot of social capital, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. The reason that I personally started telling the story of kids was for a little guy like this. This little guy was in 4K a couple years ago when we started this journey, and I remember him coming up to me one day and saying to me, "What's your job here? Where's your hair? My dad's better than you. He's got a big truck," right? And so I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what's going on? But what really resonated with me was he said, "What's your job here?" And if he didn't know what my job was here, I needed to find a way that I could tell him or show him what my job was. And so for that's where I started, trying to get out there, because I don't think a lot of people know what superintendents do. A lot of people probably don't know what principals do. And so I think that there's that mentality out there that people sit behind their desk and move papers from one side of the desk to the other, and that's not the case at all. So this was a chance for us to be not only physically present in our classrooms, but virtually present as well, and create a lot of social capital that went along with what we were doing. So again, we're not here to should, just tell you should do all these things. And Tony's going to take you through the next part.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was still trying to figure out what exactly you do as superintendent of schools.
Nice,
okay.
nice,
so,
good stuff. Good. Did you wake up? You woke up, so you can start talking.
I am here. Yeah, as Joe said, and I think it's really important that we reiterate this idea that we're not here to say this is the way it must be, right? There's no one way, our way, or the highway kind of situation. I think it's a spectrum of skills and resources that you can access at your comfort level, as long as you access something, as long as you try something, as long as you do something to tell your story. One of the platforms, well, there's multiple platforms, but this idea of social media is one that we have embraced wholeheartedly, and one that we see that has given us access to developing relational trust with our community, to allowing for a high level of transparency, and most importantly, to developing a high level of social capital within the context of the school and within the context of the entire community, because that level of transparency, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, this is how we're doing it, that allows people access. And when people have access, they have trust. And when people trust, they're willing to invest. And so social media for us has become a vehicle to build all of those pieces. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about social media and the power of social media. So this is a slide that kind of shows what was going on in 60 seconds about 3 years ago, Joe? With this
yeah, about 3 years ago, yeah, 2011.
Okay. So you can see in 2011, in 60 seconds, there were 600 new videos and 25 hours of total video put up in YouTube in 1 minute. On Facebook, for example, there were like about 700,000 status updates, which is crazy. Sounds like a lot. That was 3 years ago. And then when you look at Twitter, which is something that we're going to talk quite a bit about, there were about 100,000 tweets that went out and about 300 or so accounts that were formed every minute on Twitter. Okay, that's just a little snapshot of what's going on. You can definitely check out this slide to see all the other things that were going on. Now let's fast forward 2 years later. So late last year, right now. So before we talked about there were 25 hours of video content going up on YouTube in a minute. Now it's 72 hours of content. We were talking about before that there were about 100,000 tweets. Now there are about 300,000 tweets being sent in a minute. We talked about the fact that there were about
700,000.
700,000 posts going on Facebook, and now there's almost 2.5 million, right? So the amount of content that's being shared using social media in minutes, in seconds, has tripled over the last 2 years. And it's going to continue to grow in some sort of fashion similar to that. It may not be at the same exponential rate, but it will be at a consistent rate. But, I mean, even look at the app usage. 48,000 apps are being downloaded every minute of the day. So this is the space that our kids are living in. This is the space that maybe even some of our families are living in. So this is the space that we need to become familiar with, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever the case may be. We need to get comfortable in these social media spaces. I think that's really important. Now, we're hoping that all of you right now look like this, like you're really excited and you can't wait for us to tell you what's going to happen. That like, yay kind of look, because that's how we feel, right, Joe? You feeling like yay?
That's exactly right. Yeah, I feel
right.
She's got more hair than I do, so it's
fine. But most of you, we're guessing right now, are looking more like that. Like, what? Social media? I don't know. I'm not a teenager. I don't want to follow Britney Spears' hairdos and restaurant choices. But social media is a lot more powerful than that. That's a very limited view of it. So we're going to change that facial expression because you're going to get on this journey in a way that suits your needs and your abilities and your interests and your community, and you're going to go from there because you didn't miss the boat, okay? Don't worry about it. The boat is still going. So when we talk about social media, and that, again, is also a spectrum, right? And you can see in the graphic on this slide, we're talking about everything from Facebook to Twitter to Instagram to Blogger to Pinterest, which is a huge resource that a lot of our educators do access, to Flickr. The platforms are endless, right? And they do grow each day. Now there's Snapchat, or tomorrow there'll be this resource or whatever. But the idea of social media is not going anywhere. It's going to be there. And so these are some of the platforms that are probably the most popular and the ones that you as adults may be accessing, but also a lot of our kids are probably accessing as well. So we want to kind of prune it down a bit because there's a lot of information there. So again, these are probably the 4, 5 and you include Instagram, 6 most popular social media sites. And today, for the purposes of our conversation about branding and telling your story, we're going to focus really specifically on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And the great thing about those 3 different platforms is that through Instagram, it allows you to post across all 3 platforms with one click of a button. So it's a really powerful way to tell your story and communicate to the world what's happening in your school.
So one of the things about these platforms, in particular Facebook, we'll talk about Facebook very quickly. Facebook is still the king of what you can, of what people are doing right now. The most people are on Facebook. People are utilizing Facebook at this time in huge numbers, but it's where a lot of the adults live. A lot of kids don't live here. They don't live here because that's where their parents live, and they don't want to live in the same space that their parents live. But if you're going to take on one social media giant and to push the information out, this is probably where you want to be. It's been estimated that over 70% of Facebook users utilize this medium at least once a week. So if we were to tell you we can give you a way to connect with your families, 70% of your families on a weekly basis where you know they're going to be, a lot of people would take that on because it's not, it gets beyond the weekly newsletter. I think a lot of times when we think about the weekly newsletter, and I am guilty of this myself, when is the weekly newsletter, the Friday newsletter, when does it usually get read? The answer is Monday morning when you're cleaning out your son or daughter's backpack before you have to go back to school. So this gives you this opportunity to really connect in real time with some people, and that's really an important component moving forward in terms of how you can utilize it. It also, if it's a place that people live, not only do parents live here, but grandparents live here, and grandparents have a huge role in what we do because they want to see stuff that's going on in their school too, and they have a lot of connections, and they talk to a lot of people, and that's wonderful. And so we really embrace getting all of our families involved in it, not just our families that have kids here, but the extended families in particular as well.
So the idea of Facebook, obviously, as Joe pointed out, is a very attractive one, should be a very attractive one to us as educators because it is a space that a lot of the adults live in. Now let's look a little bit at Twitter, because Twitter is a really powerful resource to get information out in a timely fashion, in a current fashion, and allows you to share not only caption with information, but pictures as well. Similar to Facebook, but you're limited by 140 characters. So on this slide, you see some of the tweets that Joe has sent out professionally using his own handle. Then on the opposite side of that slide, you'll see some tweets from Fall Creek Schools, which is Joe's district. And within that stream, you'll see there's a picture or whatever. And then in the middle, you'll see some of the tweets that we sent out here at Kaniak. One of the common things you'll see across all 3 of those sort of streams is the presence of a hashtag, right? Because a hashtag is a really key thing to organizing and sharing that story. So that's just a little glimpse of what you could do with Twitter. We'll kind of go through a little more specifically what a different tweet could look like. Okay.
Now, one of the things just to add on to that Twitter piece is
yes.
that Twitter is growing at a pretty astronomical rate in terms of there's 300,000 new users a day. Almost half
yes.
of those new users are from age 18 to 34. And if you think about logistically where your kids are going to come from in your district at that point, if you can get people invested into the Twitter sphere where you're at from age 18 to 34, those people are going to have kids or they have young kids that are going to be moving through your district. So the more that you can engage them at an early age, I think you're in a really good spot. It's still you still only get, it's got 27% of the users look at this every day, as opposed to 71% of Facebook users look at it every week, and 63% of those users on Facebook look at it every day. So that's still the king, but Twitter has just a tremendous growth potential.
Yeah, it definitely does. And the 140 characters is a great way to kind of work on being concise in the message and being consistent in the message. And I think that's a skill set that we as educators want to be modeling, not only for the other educators in the building, but for our kids as well. We want them to be able to concisely communicate a thought. So the other platform that we wanted to talk a little bit about is Instagram. And Instagram has grown by 900% over a 2-year period, okay? That's crazy. And what I can tell you is I know that there are kids here at Kaniak as young as 2nd grade, if not younger, who have their own Instagram accounts. And they're using Instagram. They're using it to share pictures, to comment on pictures. So Instagram is a space that we definitely want to live in and want to exist in if we want to connect with our kids on a different level. Joe, before we go on, there's a question. How can principals how can principals get people to follow them on Twitter? So I will just tell you that I started out on Twitter about almost 3 years ago, rounded up to almost 3 years ago. And when I started out, I had no followers, and I spent a lot of time just kind of lurking and learning. So it was really an opportunity for me to just kind of access information. And I started following a bunch of educators who I thought were like-minded or were sharing really great resources, whether it was Todd Whitaker or Eric Sheninger or Joe Mazza, whoever the individual was. I was having access to these really great thinkers and passionate educators. Once I made the shift from just lurking and kind of consuming, and I started to create and share. For me, that was through my blogging. That's when I feel like the followers started to grow. And then the next step for me was when I started participating in chats. Once I started being present in conversations, people were like, hey, wait, I want to talk to this guy a little more, because it is 140 characters. It is limiting. You're not going to have all dialogue, but it is a great connection point and a great starting point. So for me, it went from lurking to kind of creating and sharing, but then participating pretty actively in a bunch of different chats, like Sat Chat on Saturday mornings at 7:30 a.m. Eastern, or PT Chat, which is like a parent-teacher chat on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m., or here in New York State, our New York Ed Chat, which is every other Monday at 8:30 p.m. So for me, that's kind of the journey that I went through. So, Joe, I don't know what yours.
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar here. I think that the biggest thing is to grow that piece of it, you have to contribute. So one of the things that I did in terms of, and I didn't really start out as like, I wasn't trying to like amass a bunch of followers. I was trying to like just keep my stuff in one spot. So I would like read an article on Zeit, and Zeit's a great professional development tool you have on your phone or your iPad, and you can read, you can customize your own articles, and then I would just, every time I read an article that I felt resonated with me, I'd share it out, and then I'd hashtag that, and then I'd hashtag it with like our Fall Creek PD or Go Crickets or whatever the case may be. So I would have like a running log of things that I read and I liked, that kind of thing. So I think that's what really started. But Tony's absolutely right. As soon as I started contributing on chats and engaging with people, I think that's probably where the more connections came. And the more connections that you have, the better opportunity that you have to to get a particular need met. And we've got a chance to meet some really incredible educators through Twitter. It's been almost surreal, to be honest.
Yeah.
And to really kind of be in the space of some of these people that are just like blowing the doors off of education and just doing some unbelievable things.
It's interesting because, Joe, I mean, we talked a lot about, I think, the professional piece, but in my real world, at Candiac here, and I'm sure, Joe, you'd say the same with Fall Creek, I also put it out there that I'm on Twitter. So I might sign an email with my Twitter handle, or I might put a link in an email that I send out to parents, here, check out our Twitter feed or whatever. So that was another way to not so much build followers because I wanted to increase the number of followers I had, but to build the number of parents who are accessing this platform to see what's going on in our school.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and we're better together. So the more connections that we can have and really connect, with whatever we do, the better. And if people are, I think it's really like the contribution piece. What's everybody contributing? How can we make sure that we're all helping each other out and that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. As before we started answering that, the question, Joe touched on in his response the resource Zeit, Z-I-T-E.
Yeah.
Now, Joe, is it web-based? I know it's an app. I don't know if they have a website that you can go to Zeit. I don't think so.
No.
So you can download this app on your phone, on your iPad, on your Android, whatever. But I did hear somewhere along the way that Zeit was going to be absorbed by Feedly. Feedly is F-E-E-D-L-Y. Oh, Flipboard. Sorry, Flipboard.
Flipboard.
Right. Flipboard. Flip and board together, which is also like another, almost like an online magazine, and a magazine of blog posts and different articles that might be of interest to you depending on the subject matter. And you can kind of look in specific areas, education, technology, leadership, or whatever. You can create categories to have that curate information for you. So Zeit is an app, and Flipboard is also an app.
Also an app.
Yep.
And
okay.
I think it really kind of comes down to, like, I love Zeit because just the interface is fantastic. But there's also, there's a number of different things that you can utilize that are that just put that RSS feed or your interest feed into play for you. Flipboard is like Tony said. Flipboard is a good one. Site Feedly, Nuzzle is also another one that I use that really takes what your follower or what the people who you are following on Twitter, and based on the criteria of, if they've tweeted it 5, 10, 15 times, whatever, then that gets thrown right into your app, and then it might be something that you'd be interested to. So that's a really cool resource that I've recently discovered, and you can tweet right from there too. So that's pretty cool.
Yep.
Okay.
Alrighty.
So when in this piece, we're really kind of moving forward in terms of the how do we get started in this whole process. So Tony's going to take you through how we get started in this process.
So we're going to talk about 3 very important pieces in this whole branding, storytelling experience that we're hoping to promote here and get you guys on board with. We're going to talk about the audience, because you have to know your audience. You have to understand who's listening, where they're listening, why they're listening. You have to know what it is about your context that will be helpful in building your brand. You have to know your space, and everyone within that space has to have a very common understanding of the space. And then the easiest part of it all is telling your story and celebrating your kids, your staff, your community, and all the amazing things happening there. So we're going to kind of go through those 3 points as we go through the rest of the presentation. And we start with audience, because I think the audience piece is really quite important when you think about what exactly it is that you want to do. So for me right now, the piece of audience is really about our families primarily, and knowing that our families are the primary sort of audience that I'm reaching out to. I think about the stakeholders and where they live, right? And so these are the spaces where I know here at Candidate we post the most: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Those are our top 4. Twitter and Instagram being the top 2. Facebook being kind of in 3rd place, and then YouTube being where we put out our weekly newsletters that our kids do. Our kids do these video updates, and those go out on YouTube, and we then share that link. Pinterest is another great way to share information, as is Vine, as is Google+. If you have a Google+ community, you can create that, and that's a great way to share. We have a colleague, Melinda Miller, who's a principal in Missouri, who uses Google+ communities with her staff, and that's another great way to create like a virtual circle of people where you're sharing information and resources. So that's important. Now, there is a question, Joe, before we go on. I'm not quite sure if it's a question for us, but which social media platform, I guess, do you think would be most useful for reaching new principals? If I were, if I was going to say right off the top of my head, I would say Twitter. I think people who are new to the profession, if we're guessing that they're in their late 20s, early 30s to their late 30s or whatever, Twitter is a platform that they're familiar with. It's pretty intuitive if you know how to use Facebook. So I would say through the use of the hashtag, you can connect with thousands and thousands of people, even if you're not following them or they're following you. So that's
I would agree with that. I would think Twitter is definitely the place to start when it comes to connecting with other principals or trying to get more principals invested in what we're doing, because it's not only is it where we're finding the most educators, but I think Facebook is still utilized more often than not for personal pieces, connecting with family members and that kind of thing. And Twitter, I think, has become a place where people started looking at what famous people were doing and then have moved into, oh my goodness, I can really use this for my professional development. And then that's where they have really taken off.
Joe, we have another question, which is a really important question, one that comes up almost every time. Do we experience resistance from our parents as far as sharing pictures and spotlighting your kids? So this is my answer to that. So here in my district, parents have to opt out if they. And Joe, the same by you, right?
Same, yeah, we got to opt out. Yep.
So, so automatically the information that is shared is that children may be featured in local news media outlets. It might be featured on the website, et cetera, et cetera. So we have the right or the opportunity to spotlight our kids in different platforms and mediums. I actually currently at this point have no families who have opted out, so all our kids could be featured. And initially there was some pushback, but not even pushback. There were questions and concerns about, especially Twitter, because it was like, wait, can anyone just go on Twitter and find my kid and see a picture of them? So I explained to our families that what we know about predators, and that was the primary concern, predators act on chance, especially when dealing with little kids. It's the opportunity that they see in a moment. It's not one that they lurk through Twitter to find kids. So it's not something that typically happens, according to the FBI, which I consulted to get some information about that. That was the first piece of it. The second piece was, let's look at our school website. Our school website is open to the entire world. Anyone in the world, if they want to Google Kaniak Elementary School, they're going to go right to our school website. And you know what? Our school website has pictures of our kids, has our kids' names in some instances under the pictures. And there's a little tab on our district website that says directions or contact us or whatever. And it'll give you driving directions to our school. So if you want to come find us, you're not going to necessarily go through a process of Twitter and like geo mapping and things of that nature. You're going to go to the website. So if we're comfortable and confident in what has been a high level of success in keeping our kids safe with the internet and with our website, then we should be equally as confident and comfortable with a source like Twitter. So, Joe, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
I don't have much to add there. I think we feel the same way. We opt out. We currently don't have any kids on that process. We did have a little bit, like Tony was saying, questions to begin with. And when we explain that the reason that we do this is just to celebrate what kids do. And if you ever feel like that we're extending our reach at all, then just please let us know. We're certainly not out to sell kids, sell the right way. I mean, just like we promote stuff that's going to give us financial gain or anything like that. We're just showing what kids do and trying to celebrate what they do. And I live in a community that's just beyond supportive. My school board is ridiculously supportive, and they're wonderful, and they have been since I've been here for 4 years now. Our staff is the same way, and our families have just loved the idea of getting the word out, and I think that they like the idea that they can go to the web page, or they can go to the Facebook page or the Twitter account and see what's going on a very, very regular basis.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Joe, another question just came up about the percentage of students who follow us on social media. I'm at an elementary school. I don't have that many kids who follow me, but I will tell you that once I started existing in Instagram, and posting on Instagram, the number of student followers I have has grown. I would say probably have a dozen or so kids who are following me on Instagram, and then a few kids on Twitter, but those are my kids who are like in middle school now, not ones who are still in our school. So I don't know about you, Joe.
I don't know too many people that follow me personally on the students. Most of them are graduates, but the Instagram feed has been really popular, especially for late elementary and early middle school kids. And then we have our own Twitter account, and so that's got 500 or 600. I don't know what the total number is right now, but so we have just about 550 or something like that. And then our Instagram feed has 170, but those are all kids, and mostly those are almost exclusively kids with a couple of, probably I would say 15 to 20 parents. Everybody else, they're all the rest of them are kids.
That's awesome. The next question is, has social media helped communications with parents? I can unequivocally say yes, because it has created such a high level of transparency. We're putting everything out there that we're doing, not only what we're doing, but how we're doing it and why we're doing it. And when you put that out there, this is it. This is what we're doing. As long as you can stand behind what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you're doing it, then you're good. And I feel like that high level of transparency has embedded a sense of trust, respect, and just so much powerful stuff for our community that it has definitely been helpful. Our conversations at PTA meetings, for example, have shifted from talking about the bake sale and the fundraisers to talking about book clubs and readers' workshops and math and the difference between concrete understanding and abstract understanding. And those are things that our parents are learning about because we're putting it out there. This is what we did. Here's a small group math group, a small group of students learning about bar modeling. This is what that looks like. And so those questions are coming from that information. So I feel like it has definitely helped us develop a sense of trust in the community and of honesty and of openness, which is only a positive thing. And we talked about earlier the idea of social capital and the idea of relational trust. Those things have only been impacted positively here, at least at Kaniak, and I know the same is true of Fall Creek.
Without question. It's been the biggest, I think the biggest positive piece for me as an administrator was the transparency like mirrors the authenticity of what's going on in your building. But just as importantly for me, it built up, I think, a tremendous amount of social capital that when things just don't go right, at least parents aren't saying, you know, how in the world? I mean,
Right.
this is the only time the school ever talks to us, and they're flipping out and that kind of thing. And to me, it's built a tremendous amount of social capital. And I think we're going to kind of get into some of that here in the future, just about what the story is and how we tell it and the frequency of telling it and that kind of thing.
Okay, a couple more things. Will we recommend that state affiliates use social media to reach out and engage members and prospective members? I think yes, and I think mainly if for nothing else, not only is it a great way to share you know, information like, oh, there's a meeting coming up, or, you know, here's a new article from NAESP or whatever, but it is access to some of the most awesome, free, and sustainable professional development that any educator can have. There are educators who are so passionate about the work that they're doing and so comfortable with sharing that you can find out about anything and everything. I had a question about Google Docs the other day, threw it out in a tweet. Within minutes, I had at least 10 responses and links and videos and this, that, and the other. I have learned so much in the last 3 years, so much so that my whole dissertation right now, a third-year doctoral student at the University of Pennsylvania, is about how principals are using Twitter for their professional development. And so in my mind, yeah, there's no doubt that this is a medium. Again, it doesn't have to be Twitter, but I think Twitter is a really powerful community of educators that's already out there, and just tap into it. Why try to create something else? So I think that's the way to go.
Absolutely, 100% agree. It's that the connections are what make you stronger, and our connections on Twitter have led to even, you know, either face-to-face meetings or talking on a regular basis on Voxer or something like that, where you just end up like making this connection that ends up putting you in a much, much better position as an administrator, and you can answer some of these questions that you don't have answers to. But more importantly for me is that you can not only make the connections for yourself, but you can make the connections for your staff too.
Right, that's a good point. Really good point.
So we'll go. So you got another one?
No.
Yeah, no. Keep the questions
say,
going. We can trash anything we got here. It's not a big deal at all. Just if you got questions, let's keep rolling.
Actually, the more questions you ask, the more time you'll give me to put some hair product in, because my hair is not.
Nice. That's right.
But as we talked about, getting a sense of where your stakeholders live, and mainly you're talking about your families, the parents, but also your kids and even your staff. That's a really important piece to have, so you know where to share the information, because you want to share where they are. You know, we don't want to share the information just on our school website when we know most people aren't looking at the school website. So that piece is important.
Yeah, that's actually what we're getting into. It's like, you know, who said this? I can't wait to go home and look at the district website. There's your answer, folks. Nobody in the world has ever said that in life. It's just not something that people do. And there's incredible things going on websites, but nobody goes there. So finding a way to get people there is really an important component. So I mean, and we got to find people where they live virtually. This is a picture of an event in 2005. This is a picture of an event in 2013. Clearly, there's a difference between what was going on here and what's going on here. But this isn't big city stuff, too. This is Cadott, Wisconsin. This is like 15 miles away from here. It's a small school district. It happens in every kindergarten counselor across the country. You have parents just absolutely reporting everything that they do, and it really gets down to what your story is and how you tell it.
And Joe, very important question. We're just going to pause for a second here. What do we think is the most effective way to communicate, pictures or videos? So that's the question. We're going to get to that question because we're going to talk a little bit about media platforms and what's growing right now in trends. So we'll get to that in a moment.
Right. Absolutely. So the story, and I don't know what the answer is to that one, to be honest. I mean, I think that they both are incredible. I think, like we talked about when it came to pictures and text, or we'll talk about pictures and text a little bit, but the engagement in pictures is far superior. I think you would find the same with videos, but it's, you know, the brain just processes visuals a lot faster, so like 60,000 times faster, actually. So the story really is, I think the problem, not the issue with the story, but the piece about the story is the frequency of you telling the story is really an important component. I think every time that we send something out, or when I used to send stuff out, I wanted it to be like when teacher was reading Ralphie's scene from A Christmas Story, where she felt like it's the greatest thing that she's ever seen, and I want to get that out there. And oh my goodness, they're going to react like it's the most wonderful thing that's ever come across their eyes. And clearly, that wasn't always the case. So what we did here that I try to keep telling people is you're going to make mistakes. There are things that are going to happen that are not permanent, but you're going to make mistakes as you go through this process, and that's okay. It's just that it's the frequency of what happens that will determine what the reaction is to that. Like a couple weeks ago, I sent out a very quick message because we had a bus that was going to be late. Well, instead of writing hello everyone, I kind of forgot the O in hello, and this message went out to 950 people. So I didn't even think twice about it. I'm like, oh, you know what? Look at it. And I got the only 2 reactions that I got from people. I got an email from a staff member that just could not stop laughing, and then I got an email from a parent who said the same thing. She laughed and laughed and laughed because they know that I was trying to get a piece of information out there, and it's not the only time that I connect with them. If it was the only time that I connected with them and I wrote something that said, hell, everyone, they would flip out. They'd be like, well, this guy, we're paying him how much money to run this school district, and he doesn't even know how to spell? But it's just different if you have that opportunity. And the more that you do that, the more social capital that you're going to build. And I think that whole piece of, well, all this social capital is making people, all this social media is making people antisocial. It's not. It's just different social. And different social is okay. It's just a question of what that social looks like. When I was a kid, my parents used to put like everything on the fridge. I'd like draw a picture, fridge, draw a line on a piece of paper, it goes on the fridge. All the stuff would just go on the fridge, right? And people would come to my house and they'd look at the fridge, and then they'd see a picture and they'd ask questions and they'd talk about it a little bit. Well, now we have the opportunity to give that type of connection to parents all the time. They can see that in their Instagram feed. They can see it in their Facebook feed. They can show their coworkers. They can brag to everybody. It comes all in that one spot. All the pictures, all the stuff that we do with them, it's all in one spot. So, when we were kids, they go home at the end of every day, and for years they would say, people would get home and the parents would say, hey, what'd you do at school today? And the kid would say, nothing. I don't know.
Nothing.
Whatever, but nothing, right? Now,
what's your favorite class?
I don't know, gym. No, recess, yeah. Recess or lunch,
recess,
right?
Right.
Yeah. So now it's not, hey, what did you do at school today? It's, hey, I saw that you were doing an egg drop contest like they were doing today. They're dropping eggs and trying to make sure that they didn't crack. Tell me more about that, right? So now that conversation is completely shifted, and it doesn't allow the student to say, I don't know, or nothing. And after it creeps them out a little bit because, mom and dad are, in their business, then they can have some really good conversations about that.
Yep, and those conversations are transformational, and that's really important. And as Joe said, if we were just to send out one random piece of information, you're not building social capital like that. You're not building relational trust like that. You're not telling your story like that. You are fragmenting the community in that way, and that is not okay. So we're here to tell you that the more effort you put into telling your story, the payback, or not the payback, but the rewards and the successes that come from that are pretty significant. Here's an example of a tweet that you could send, right? So you can send, our third graders did an amazing job of working together today. And that's great, that's fine, that's a nice piece of information. But what did that look like? What were they working on? Well, here's an example of an event that took place today. So I was in a 5th grade classroom, and the 5th grade learners and students, learners, kids, were comparing their math note cards because they were preparing for a test. So they came up with like a memory game, and they were collaborating on this project. It was so powerful to sit and watch. I was totally blown away by the level of independence, but by the amount of collaboration that they embodied. When you put out a tweet like this, parents see what I'm talking about, parents can read what I'm talking about, and parents have a sense of a question they might be able to ask their 5th grader. Even if their 5th grader is not in that picture. Are you, what are you working on in math? Are you doing something as a group? Whatever the case may be, we give them an entry point. And when you give families an entry point, you empower them. And when you empower them, they're able to be engaged in the educational process, not just be, observers of the educational process. I think it's really important. So yeah, that's just an example of a tweet. And the great thing is, the picture's there, you don't need all that stuff at the top. You don't need the Walkman and the handheld video camera and the laptop and the cell phone from 1912. Everything can be done from a device, from a device as small as this or as big as an iPad or a laptop if you want to go that far, but you only need a device. And with the ability to take pictures, download a few apps, you're good to go. So I think that's an important piece. Now, Joe, we did get a question here right before we jump into social media trends. Do all teachers use social media? So I can't tell you that every teacher in my building is using social media, but what I can tell you is that I have 20 classrooms this year. Each classroom has a Twitter account that they are tweeting using pictures of their kids and little blurbs or captions of their kids. So that's what I can tell you about the teachers here at Canandaigua. There are other support staff specialists who are using Twitter as well. But in regards to telling our story, I know every classroom here at Canandaigua this year, the first year, and I've been talking about social media for years. This is the first year that I can say all our classrooms are connected.
We have all of our teachers have accounts. Probably a third of them are using them actively at this point. So you know, it's not really for me. I can tell people as much as possible that this is a good thing and you want to get on board. I don't hold a candle to their colleagues at all. So the growth that we've seen in the last 2 years of people getting on Twitter has come from their colleagues saying, hey, this is really cool. Look what you're doing. Look what we're doing, that kind of thing. So that's where the majority of growth has come.
That's true. And that's an important piece. We have to respect that it's a journey that looks different for everyone. So everyone may not be able to dive into the deep end of the pool. It might take some time, right? And so when we think about that, we have to think about the social media trends that we see in place. The first and most important piece is that social media is not an option. That is what our kids know. Our kids know about Instagram. They know about Snapchat. They know about iPhone and Facebook, and they know about all these spaces. And they are existing in these spaces, in Google Plus communities. My son is 9 years old. He has a Google Plus account. He is commenting on YouTube videos, sharing YouTube videos, creating YouTube videos. It is here, and it is staying here. It is not going anywhere. It may evolve. It may look different than what it looks like today, but it is going to be with us. We also know that there is such a tremendous amount of growth as it relates to mobile devices, smartphones, and the access that people have at their fingertips to the Internet, to cameras, to videos. It's there. We need to access that. The other piece is the Google Plus piece, right? So not a lot of people are living in the Google Plus space yet, even though if you have a Google account or a Gmail account, you do have access to that. It is a space that very, very nicely complements Twitter in so much as sharing resources in a circle and creating like a little virtual community that you can share with. So that's a space you want to experience and expose yourself to. Number 4, which goes back to that question about videos or pictures, images in general are going to be used more and more across the Internet. So we have to capitalize on that, and we have to get ahead of that. And that's what this idea of sharing our stories about and spotlighting our kids and our staff. Whether it's in a picture or video, let's be honest, you see a picture of a cute kid or a video of a cute kid, you're good. It doesn't matter what's in the content on some level. Like, we do weekly video newsletters. I don't even know if people really listen to what we're saying, but the kids look so freaking cute that it's all good. So the idea of this picture versus video is kind of a secondary piece. It's an image. An image captures attention, right? I think that's really most important. And Joe, you said we process it how much faster than text?
60,000 times faster.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I can't even write 60,000. So the other piece, and that video goes with it, right? And our kids, again, I can speak to my son, and I know Joe lives with his kids as well. They're creators of content or remixers of content. They're putting stuff out there. They're putting stuff on YouTube, whether we know it or not. So we need to be aware of that. And the last piece is this idea of podcasts. Podcasts are another wonderful way to share information, and this is something maybe state affiliates want to think about. You may want to create a podcast that you share out to other regional members or to engage prospective members. Here's some information. Here's an update or whatever. You can do like a quick little radio show. Joe and I do a bi-weekly podcast where we feature different educators who do an amazing job branding their space and telling their story. It's 12 minutes. It's a short little audio clip. People listen. They get ideas. So a podcast might be something that you want to consider as well. So those are the trends.
So and one of the things, the one trend we want to get to is mobile growth, because that's where people are going to find you're going to have a tremendous amount of mobile growth in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and the piece about mobile technology, and again, mainly smartphones is what we're talking about, it crosses all barriers. SES is not a variable when we're talking about devices. In communities that have as high as 90% SES rates, low socioeconomic rates, they have access to mobile devices. That is there. That is in people's hands. So we need to capitalize on that as well and put information out there. That's really very important.
Yeah, just to kind of speak to the whole picture, just to kind of get back to the video versus pictures, I think that the most important thing, like we said, is the image in and of itself is the most important thing. The more images that you can get out there, the better. If 90% of the information that was transmitted to us is visual, 60,000 times faster, those are all really, I mean, we are built for visuals. If you think about like J.K. Rowling drew Harry Potter's world before she drew it. Tolkien drew Middle-earth before it was written. I mean, so all of these things have a profound impact, or the visual has a profound impact on the mind.
Yeah. Joe, we have a couple of questions. So one question is has our use of social media brought positive media attention? I mean, I did an interview with Ed Week about our use of social media to brand our space, and I guess Joe and I have participated in conferences on a national level, but I can't tell you that here at our school that we've had bazillion reporters coming in to find out what we're doing. But I do know our good friend Eric Scheninger, who was the principal of New Milford High School. Their use of social media had them on local news stations, in the papers, even in USA Today magazine on a specific weekend. So it definitely does bring attention, especially when you're using it in the right way. And you have to get out there to get that attention.
Right. So. We get a fair amount of media attention locally when we started the process, and we had a big event that was like a red carpet event that was really, really well received a couple years ago, and ended up actually making it, or we started on our Facebook page and then ended up making it to CNN.com for the day. So we got a lot of bounce on that, which was really nice, and I think it was good for our families too, and really kicked it off in a good fashion.
And then we have a question about participating in our podcast. I don't know if the question means people want to be a guest on the podcast or they just want to listen to the podcast. If they want to listen to it, they can just go to iTunes, search Brand Ed, or they can go to BAM Radio Network, which is a website. Just Google BAM Radio, BAM Radio, and you can search within their website. It's called Branded. So like the word branded, BRANDED, is our podcast/radio show. And they're, like we said, they're about 12-minute episodes that feature different educators from across the country sharing what they do to brand their spaces and tell their story. Okay, so that's how you can participate in our podcast. If you want to be a guest in our podcast, or email one of us, tweet one of us.
Yeah, just
we're always looking to hear the stories. Yeah, I mean, of course, I myself enjoy talking quite a lot, and I could probably be a guest.
You're telling me. I've got like I've talked for like I got 17 words in since this thing started.
Okay, so and this idea of social media and telling our story is one that we have to make the time for, because it really is critical to our work. And for nothing else, when we think about things like education, educator effectiveness, and we need to evaluate teachers and stuff like that, what do we need? We need data. How do we get data? By being in the classrooms. How do we get ourselves engaged while we're in the classrooms? Here it is. Tell your story. Take pictures.
Absolutely.
Create captions. This is not something that we're too busy to do. This is something that we're already doing. It's just doing it in a little bit of a different way.
Right, and I think sometimes we got to take a step back. You will always have work on your desk. I promise you that.
Yep.
But if the best part of your day is telling the story to kids, then that's definitely the way to do it. So we want to make sure that not only can you take a step back, but that it's easy. Because the biggest thing that we hear from people is that we don't, there's not enough time to do it. So we have an app that parents can connect with, and that's been a one-stop shop. That's been wonderful for people to kind of get to and move through, and they can get anything that they want there. So the time on the parent's end is not tough because it's right there. The time from an administrative perspective is, how can I find the time to do what I do, plus add these things to what I'm doing? And it's got to be easy. It can't be like Sheldon and Cooper's friendship algorithm where you do this, this, this. If this happens and this happens, it just has to be, while you're there, take a quick picture. And if you have this plan that's just going to go straight and everything's going to go really well, you're going to be really disappointed when you hit all these pitfalls. Don't worry about it. As long as you're moving forward, it really doesn't matter. If people look at it differently, this is a picture of my wife and my son on the exact same roller coaster. They're having an incredibly different experience on that roller coaster, right? And so you're going to find people that just have a different experience in the whole thing. With the biggest piece is just keep moving forward and doing something different and making sure that your space is in a spot where people can celebrate what kids are doing.
Well, just to be clear, we know that your wife is smiling in that picture because that's a few minutes away from you. So let's just be honest.
I wasn't there. Yeah, that's right. I'm kidding.
She's like, woohoo! No. The idea, though, of building your brand is a really important one. And I know, we talk a lot about brands as they relate to like the whole business world, but I think the primary thing is a brand evokes an emotion, right? You see a brand, you see a logo, an icon, it evokes an emotion, and that's the intention. That's what businesses want to do. They want you to see something, respond to it. Like your brain releases endorphins when you see blah, blah, blah. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about now. So what do you think about when you see this image? What's the first thing that pops into your head? I don't know. About you, Joe? What's the first thing that pops into your head?
That one invokes money because my kids all want Under Armour gear, and I'm broke now.
I think sports. The next one
Yeah,
sports. For me, I mean, come on. I grew up at McDonald's. The Golden Arches. I think of French fries. I want to go there. It makes me happy. It brings back childhood memories. Apple. They've changed my life. I don't know what I would do without my iPhone. So the idea of branding, yeah, it's definitely a marketing practice, right? It is very much sort of intermingled with the business world. But when you boil it down, it's about creating a name and design an identity that differentiates you from something else. That's what we want to do as a school. We want to show what makes Candiac special, what makes Fall Creek special. So you need to think about what it is that is your identity. And as Joe says, Joe, you have to read bullet number 2 because that's your thing. You only have 15.
Oh, yeah, you have 15 seconds to make sure. Like, what are you going to do to tell your story in 15 seconds? So that's really an important deal.
Yeah, and there's so much amazing stuff happening in our schools, and it's driven by our kids and our staff. So what are those amazing things happening in your schools? Is it a program that you're proud of? Is it a partnership with a local business that you're proud of? Is it an event that your kids organize and planned? Is it a philanthropic activity? Whatever the case may be, what is it that you're proudest of? What are the amazing things happening in your school, in your district, in your classroom? Celebrate those things. Spotlight those things. Put them out there because those are the things that identify you and make you different from someone else. Here at Candiac, we're bucket fillers. The other 2 elementary schools in our district are awesome too, but because we're bucket fillers, people identify us in that way. It makes us a little different. It's part of our brand. It's part of the feeling and the emotion that we want to evoke when people think about Candiac. So the piece about the identity is, though, who knows your identity? Does everyone describe your school, your space, your district in the same way? That's very important. You want to have a common vision, a common understanding of what your identity is because you want people telling that same story. You don't want people talking about, test scores and how test scores are the most important thing when it's not at all what's important to you as the superintendent or the principal or whatever. You want that message to be consistent. We're child-centered. We believe in project-based learning. We want to see our kids driving instruction and their voices matter. Whatever the case is, whatever it is that identifies you, needs to be consistent across every constituent group. Families need to say it, kids need to say it, staff needs to say it, you need to say it. Not only say it, but you need to be believing it, okay? And how do you share your story? How do you talk about it? How do you engage people in those conversations so that that story becomes a common story? The language that is shared across all constituent groups is a really important piece as well. So the question that Joe knows that I'm kind of secretly obsessed with. Does the brand promise match the brand experience? So when I give that tour at kindergarten orientation night in April, and I talk about Candiac being the most amazing space because of XYZ, because of our writer's workshop and our reader's workshop, and because of the hands-on math that we do, because of the bucket filling that we believe in, because of the fact that we empower our kids to use their voice. Those are all these promises that I'm making. Does the experience match that? And I'm going to tell you wholeheartedly, I make sure that it does. We make sure that it does. Every member of this community engages in that because that is what's paramount. I could sit here and tell you all this great stuff, but if that's not what's happening, then there's no point in branding your space because you're creating a false brand, one that will not be sustainable. It has to match. The promise has to match the experience.
And the people have to know that too, because if your people around you think that you're just like shoveling a bunch of stuff, you lose like right away, because if the people in your space aren't going to be the one promoting it, you got a huge problem. So what we do is we try to find out like what that brand is, that FC or our Go Crickets brand, and then we just put it out in a bunch of different places. We give away a lot of stuff. We give away a lot of T-shirts. First 5 moms to find me at Muffins with Mom and tell me what the vision of Fall Creek Elementary School is, get a prize. And then this is just a reaction on Facebook, because not only did the mom know it, but the kindergartner knew it as well, which I thought was really cool, and they want a T-shirt. So our Find It Fridays, I put a sticker out somewhere in the high school. The first person to find it, tweet it, post it, or come and find me in the district office. District office gets a $5 gift card and a T-shirt. So the high school kids are involved as well. So anything that we can do to promote stuff and get people talking about it. So as soon as we found something, we use Go Crickets. We put it on everything. We found out that's where we want to live. That's what we're going to adhere to. What is Go Crickets moving forward? Everybody on the same page, celebrating what we do. And we put it on everything. We put it on, Frisbees and T-shirts and stress balls and umbrellas and bags and water bottles and cakes and what else, whatever it is, we put it on everything just so people know that that's who we are and where we're coming from.
Yep. And you know what? I know there are probably a lot of people out here listening right now thinking, why bother? What is the point of this? What is this, that's going to do? What about this is going to change what we're doing? Or why is it an important thing to focus on? Bottom line is, if you don't tell your story, if schools don't tell their story, if districts don't tell their stories, someone else is going to do it. And I can assure you, and Joe will back me up on this, they will not do it in the same way that you do. And they will not spotlight all the positive things happening. Here's an example of the latest Time Magazine issue that's going to come out. Title, Rotten Apples. And they're talking about how impossible it is to fire a bad teacher. That's it. We're done, because this is going out to every person in this country, right? If they want to access it, it's a nationwide publication. What's being projected here? That there are bad teachers, that we are rotten apples. That's not the story we want to tell, because we know that that's just a fraction of what exists in our classrooms, in our schools, in our spaces. And that's why we need to tell our story. It is incumbent upon us to do that.
Absolutely. And I think the power of social media gets us to a place where we can do that. This is Miles Scott. This is the San Francisco Bat kid. I believe it was a year and a half ago at this point that, he had a Make-A-Wish. He wanted to be Batman, right? So there were 13,000 people in San Francisco that attended this event. 13,000 people. That in and of itself is amazing. And this kid,
crazy.
What it did for this kid is crazy. But beyond that, look at this. 21,000 photos viewed over 120 million times. A 1.7 billion person reach. 406,000 tweets during this time. This is a multi-hour thing. That was it. But look at the reach that they got during this time. And if you do that, and if you have that ability to reach an incredible amount of people, you can tell a really sound story about what's going on in your school.
And it comes down to 3 things, 3 steps. Know who your audience is and be connected to that audience. And that includes your staff, that includes the community, and number 1, your kids. Know your audience. That is where you start to build the foundation for your brand, okay? And you need to remember, does your brand experience match your brand promise? Because if it doesn't, there's work to be done. And you can think about things like, what do we believe in? What do we stand for? Those are things that are always percolating in our minds, right? We're always thinking about those things. Those things need to be answered in a very similar way across all audience groups, right? That's really important. And then the best part of the job and the easiest part of the job is celebrating, spotlighting all the awesome things happening in your space, whether it's your classroom, your school, or your district. It is an opportunity for us to switch the focus from the negativity that has permeated the landscape of public education back to the positivity that exists in many, if not most, of the spaces in our country.
Absolutely. And we always end our podcast with never give up the opportunity to say something great about your school. This is, as leaders, this is an opportunity that you have to build social capital and celebrate kids. And if those are the 2 things that you do best, if you build social capital and you celebrate kids, you're in a really, really good place, because it's about what kids are doing. If you're celebrating what is going on in the context of classrooms, the teaching and learning that's going on in the context of your classroom, people are going to want to do that because that's what's being celebrated. And hopefully, in that regard, you end up finding yourself in a really, really good spot.
Joe, we have another question there. Can state affiliates spotlight what they are doing for principals in their state? I don't know if that means in regards to our podcast. Certainly, people can come on and tell their story, because at a state affiliate level, it might look very different than what it might look like for a classroom teacher. So definitely something that could happen. So we're happy to take any questions here at the back end of the webinar. If anyone wants to know anything else, or
the other thing that I think from a state perspective is really important. If you have things out there that you feel like are really that are just incumbent to your organization that they know, find and deliver a hashtag on Twitter that everybody knows and can understand and will use. And that way you can crowdsource a ridiculous amount of information through all of your the people in your state organization and go from there. And if you're trying to get people more invested in the process of being in the NAESP or just connecting with you in that regard, then I think it's really important that you give them a reason to do that. What are you providing? What are we providing that's going to make them better? And having a hashtag where all these resources are collated and come together is a really big thing.
The hashtag is huge. Definitely agree with that. For us, it's CannyEgg. Just hashtag the school name, CannyEgg. No one else really uses it. It has been a great way to sort of group the information that goes out from our school, and all our teachers use the hashtag as well.
Yeah, and I think it's something through NAESP, if it's just hashtag NAESP, or if it's NAESP PD, or if it's, I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. It just has to be, I would advocate for something smaller just because it would give you more characters. But getting something up where you know, like NAESP Learn or something like that, where you just know it's always going to be right there, then maybe that might help everybody just find a place for all that data.
Good point. That's a great point. So we're happy to take any questions if there are any more questions.
Yeah.
We hope that the information shared was useful and that there are resources. And if you want more information, you could also check out our book. We wrote a book called The Power of Branding, right? Is that what it's called?
That is what it's called. That's right.
Telling your school story. And it's through Corwin in their Connected Educators series. It's like how $10 book. It's a short book, but it's more about a resource guide than it is a book per se.
Yeah, it's more. Yeah, it's not read it front to back, which wouldn't take you a long time, but it's just one of those things where you hopefully that the stuff in there will help anybody just tell a story of kids, and a couple of really, really easy ways to get it started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and I just want to chime in, this is Ann, that if anyone's interested in ordering that book, they can send me an email here at NAESP. It's ahenley@naesp.org, and I will get those books to them.
Thank
Nice.
you. Are we good?
Yeah,
all right.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, Tony and Joe. This has been very informative and very entertaining. So we appreciate it, and we appreciate all the questions that came in. And,
no, thank you.
It will be archived and on our website and available probably next week.
All right.
Great.
Thank you for the
opportunity. If
opportunity.
there's anything that we can do, find us on Twitter, email us, or whatever you need. We're here to help anybody that we can, and anything that we can do to make life better for you as a principal or the organization. The organization has been so good to so many people. Anything that we can do to help that, then we certainly would love to be part of that.
Agreed.
Thank
I
you
second that. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay.